The gentleman from Charlottesville, Mr. Toscano.
Mr. Speaker, parliamentary inquiry.
Stated.
Mr. Speaker, I think I would be correct, would I not, in assuming that what is before us is the entire budget with the Senate amendments, because we are voting on the whole package that has come over from the Senate. Would I not be correct?
You would be correct.
I'd like to speak to the Senate amendments and the budget.
Gentleman has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House, it's been a very long day, and we haven't spent a lot of time debating, but I think people are ready to go home. When I came here today, I was prepared to vote for a budget, to vote yes on a budget. I'd spent a lot of time talking to folks on appropriations. I understood pretty clearly the implications of not being able to access the rainy day fund. There were things that I didn't like in the budget, but I had decided I was ready to vote for it, even though it didn't include any form of closing the coverage gap, because I thought we needed to have a budget. But along the way, it got sidetracked. And it got sidetracked because it seemed that in the other body there was some kind of agreement that there would be no amendments to the budget. That, in fact, the other body had accepted the logic of the House, which we've heard again and again and again. We want a clean budget. We want a clean budget. How many times did we hear that? We want a clean budget. And we're going to get a clean budget until an amendment got slapped down in the other body. And now we don't have that clean budget anymore. How many times had we heard from the other side of the aisle, yeah, we're ready to discuss Medicaid. We'll do it in a special session. We're not going to rule it out. We're not going to rule it in. But all of a sudden now we have this little amendment. And this little amendment pretty clearly says we're ruling it out. Pure and simple. It says there won't be any expansion unless there's an appropriate appropriation bill. Not a decision by Merck. It says an appropriation bill after July 1, 2014. Well, when do we get back together again? Next January. And unless you have a special session that relates to some kind of appropriations, you cannot take up the Medicaid issue until at least next January. If then. How many times during this session have we heard people say, let's give the Merck a chance. They're doing such a terrific job. Let's let them exercise their charge. Well, ladies and gentlemen, with this amendment, you just wipe that out. So what have you been saying for the last 4 months? Not much. Because again and again and again, there have been proposals made for how you could do a Virginia way to access some $5.2 million that we're losing every day that you and I are sending to Washington, D.C. And your constituents are sending to Washington, D.C. And what do you want to do with it? You are kicking it away because this says you can't accept money. So tell your constituents when they complain about that check that they've written that ends up in Connecticut or New York. Yeah, I voted against it. I voted against getting your money back. And tell your hospital friends, after you just pull the rug out from under them by cutting their reimbursement rates that we had in the original budget. Well, I just voted to cut your reimbursement rates. You figure out a way to make the bottom line work. And tell some of your constituents that comprise up to the 400,000 Virginians who might have access to coverage that would be remotely similar to the kind of coverage that we have. I decided not to vote for that. Not only that, but I foreclosed any opportunity to discuss it anytime soon. So you guys figure it out. You figure out how you're going to deal with your illness. You figure out how you're going to pay your bills. Not my problem. It's Obama's problem. It's his fault. Blame it on him. When you're sick, you write that card to Obama and complain to him. Don't touch me. It's not my responsibility. Every step along the way in this session, you all have moved the goalposts. And the other day, when Republican Eric Cantor got defeated, you ripped the goalposts right out of the ground. The Tea Party's taken over, guys. And there's going to be a lot of pain and suffering before you take it back. You know the right thing to do. You know the human thing to do. You know the economic thing to do. But you also know who's looking over your shoulder. Beyond the amendment, there's a lot of other good reasons not to vote for this budget, independent of how fast it was put together. The hope was we get a budget out of here fast so we could save our AAA bond rating. In the process, we are taking away at a lot of things that people consider important. Cuts to education. Flatlining of higher education. Oh yeah, we think that's really important too. We're going to flatline it. Advanced manufacturing, cuts to that. Oh yeah, jobs are important, but we're going to make sure that the Governor's Opportunity Fund doesn't have as much money as it needs. Commerce and trade. Oh, ID and DD waivers. Yeah, we think that's really important, but we're going to cut that out too. Yeah, it takes some time, but maybe we should look at some of these tax preferences we're given to some of these large corporations that are costing us $1 billion a year. Maybe we should plug those gaps. What have we been doing with those? Oh, we're just adding more to the books. Whether it's beehives or coal, we find a nice thing we like, we're going to give it a tax credit. Take money away from the budget, and now we can't fund DD waivers, ID waivers, or educational funding that we think is important. Ladies and gentlemen, there's a lot not to like in this budget. There's a lot not to like in this amendment. For that reason, for those reasons, I hope you vote no on the budget. Thank you.